I've told you this story before. My grandmother, growing up in Hungary, she told me stories of going out into the backyard and literally choking the chicken, and that,
You should be careful with that term. That's also referred to as something else.
Well, let's not talk about my grandmother choking the chicken then. But she went into the backyard, killed her own chicken, and that's what was dinner, right? And then went into the garden and pulled out some vegetables and made it with the chicken. Let's go. Episode 122. Should I renovate or move?
Like love it or list it.
Love it or list it. Let's go. You're the intro.
With that, we'll just use that as the intro. Don't overthink it.
No, come on, proper intro.
Do you listen to other podcasts? Some of their intros are just them starting talking. I think it's overthought. All right, to satisfy Ariel, this is episode 122 of KT Confidential. I'm Adrian Trott. This is Ariel Kermendi, my neighbor, partner, friend, and partner in crime, etc. This is the real estate podcast. And today we're talking love it or list it. Do you want to rent? Do you want to rent? Do you want to renovate? Or do you want to move? I mean, I think the answer's clear.
Is it?
I think so.
By the way. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. It's been super busy, so I'm glad we managed to squeeze this in today. Don't mind me while I put some chapstick on.
No matter how busy, how slow, whatever, for the last... I got to think, because you think KT Quick Tips, we transitioned to KT Confidential, the real estate podcast.
Was that what it turned into?
We're 122 episodes into the podcast, and we did 100 and a few episodes of
200 and something
of KT Quick Tips.
Yeah, it was over 200. It was like 5 years.
Really?
4 or 5 years.
I think so. I don't, but whatever. We have 300 or 400 weeks.
Well, while you're talking, I'm going to find out because.
Think about that. 300 or 400 weeks that we have. Yeah, the past 6 years, every single week. Every single week for the past 6 years, we've been putting out content.
Did I lose you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, I think something's wrong with my AirPods. They keep cutting out. Think about what? You cut off it. Think about that.
For the past 300 or 400 weeks, somewhere in between there, every single week, we have put out this type of content.
Yes, we have. We've made time to do it. Sometimes
not too many. Never mind realtors or real estate teams or brokerages, because for sure we're leading the pack in that. But think about businesses and just entrepreneurs in general. Can you find any others that have done that every week for the past 6 or 7 years?
I lost you again. I think I'm going to take my AirPods out.
Hey, Dickface, can you hear me now? So this is episode 122 of KT Confidential. Do you want to renovate your existing home, or should you sell the home and move? That's the topic for today.
I'm back. I don't know what's happened to my AirPods.
You're back. I find the AirPods are really hit or miss if they have a proper charge or not.
Yeah.
And if they are losing their battery power, they become less reliable.
KT Quick Tips, 198 episodes, and I'm sure there's a few missing. So yeah, we did a good 4 years. That's good.
So we have 400 weeks, more than.
Yeah.
It's a long time, my friend.
It is.
So this is a question that comes up a lot.
I find the big one with this one is not so much renovate, but I think people want added a bit more space. So for me, in my experience, has been, do we finish the basement or do we buy a new house?
Well, that's a renovation.
No, I know, but I'm saying that's the specific one that I often run into. I guess the other one might be, I think they're big renos. So like, do we get a pool or do we buy a pool house?
House with a pool. Already installed.
Pool house.
Right. I call it a pool house sometimes, and people are like, pool house?
Well, I guess a pool house is like a house with a pool with a separate house that's for changing and stuff.
Yes.
But
I have a friend, a close friend, that his parents have a pool house, and that pool house could easily be a primary residence.
Yeah. Well, in places like Guelph now, you could do that and have it legal, have a separate apartment back there.
That's why Guelph is also a great spot for investments, because they do have a lot of options that way. So finish the basement. We've had a lot of clients, actually, surprisingly, over the last couple of years that have added second floors or additions to the property.
I think the big thing is maybe location is a big.
Well, that's where you got to start. That's where you got to start. Do you love the location?
Right.
Because that is the unchangeable. And it can be your specific property. It can be the street. It can be the neighborhood. Well, maybe not so much the neighborhood, actually, because a lot of neighborhoods give you the opportunity to upsize or downsize or whatever within that same geographical area. So, you might love your neighbors. Like if you and I decided we were inseparable and
for those of you that don't know, we're next door neighbors.
I am never coming over with any leftover food again. How about that?
Well, it's been a while. Certainly not since COVID started.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Since COVID started, we haven't been transferring things from home to home like we did in the past.
Living here has lost its appeal.
Yeah, well, hey, we've both been considering and looking to potentially move.
I think so the last time I had a client that was contemplating the idea of reno or buy, they ended up buying. And so their big thing was two things. They wanted more living space. So they were contemplating finishing the basement. So this is the house on Fengate in Georgetown. The other thing is they didn't mind the size of their yard, but the way it was a newer development. There was little privacy. The homes behind them were elevated slightly, so there were a lot of eyes on them. They had very little privacy. So for them, it was two things that bothered them. They needed more space by way of a finished basement, perhaps, and more privacy. The privacy would be next to impossible to achieve. I mean, even putting in fairly mature trees, which would be expensive, still wouldn't really provide that. Just the way the houses were positioned behind them. So they couldn't really achieve what they wanted to. They could get some privacy, but it wouldn't completely achieve it. And then timing was perfect. The perfect house popped up. It was backing onto a street, so there was no homes behind them. It was nicely treed. It was about, I can't remember the age, about 10 years old, maybe a bit older, 15 years old. And it had a pool. The basement was done. It was a bigger home. So it checked off all the boxes. And the price to upgrade to it was about I can't remember exactly. It was between $200,000 and $300,000. So,
well, if you're going to finish your basement and install a pool and some privacy, there goes $250K right there.
Right. And you still wouldn't have the same degree of privacy that they do now.
So the basement can add a tremendous amount of extra living space, but you get no natural light down there. It's harder to maintain a proper temperature. So some basements can be really cold, and no matter what you do, like you're below grade, it's going to be colder, right? So even if you insulate it and jack up the heat, you're going to end up over hot in some areas of the upstairs floors, and then you don't have a proper balance of climate.
I almost feel like they should have a separate vent with a fan that can be run in either direction, that runs from the top floor to the basement. And in the winter, you crank it so it's pulling air from the basement and pushing it up. Or no, other way around. Sorry,
other way around, buddy.
Other way around. And then in the summer, you crank
cold
it the
air
other
falls,
way.
pal.
Yeah. You crank it the other way in the summer to bring some of the cool air back upstairs.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, it would be easy to do, and it would help to regulate the temperature a bit.
Yeah, and the issue is when most home builders. Well, there you go. When we start doing some custom homes, maybe we'll find a way to integrate things like that.
Well, I think HVAC systems are so dated. That whole industry needs to be revamped. Like maybe it's an affordability issue, but like, why can't these things have electronically controlled dampers that control more accurately where the air goes, right?
Yeah. Well, you can change your the vents.
But it doesn't really help that much.
Yeah. Well,
in fact,
I think there will be technological advancements in that industry, because you're seeing a lot of third-party companies come out with things that are app controlled.
Yeah.
And you know, these thermostats that now have separate room controls and things like that. So it's just a matter of, finding ways to install technology in the actual ducting, the furnace itself, things like that. It'll come.
Well, and I think a lot of custom builders, I don't know that it's made its way into the big builders where they're mass producing houses yet, probably because of an affordability factor. But like my dad has a custom built house, and they have in-floor radiant heating on all levels. And that's their source of heat. So it is extremely effective. It doesn't dry out the air, so it's way better.
That's the end of your story?
Yeah, that's the end of the story.
Great story. So here's my thing. If you live in a home where now renovating, let me just go back, because we're saying love it or list it, right? And let's just think about, when we say that, we think of like HGTV shows.
Yeah.
Where a contractor goes in, they'll pretty up your house and give you more functionality or whatever. Usually in those cases, though, it's not increasing the size of the home. It's increasing functionality, or providing more modern technologies or modern updates, right? So as an example, homes that were built in the 1980s and, right into the 1990s, there was a lot of kind of segregated areas within main floors, right? You had your formal living, your formal dining. The kitchen oftentimes was on its own and not open to other areas. And
sometimes to the point where there's even doors on the entryways.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And as we know now, most people want to have a little bit more of an open concept.
Not as much as it was even 5 years ago, though.
Not as much, because now, certainly now with COVID and people working from home, you need some separation, and some people want that large separate dining room for, special occasions or whatever. But for the most part, I think kitchen and living area, people want relatively open to each other. So if you have an outdated kitchen and you've got walls that are blocking you between you and, the rest of the family or your guests when you're entertaining, you might want to knock down a wall, put in new cabinetry, a whole new kitchen. And that can make the world of difference in how the space feels, right?
Yeah.
But then what you got to consider is, are you going to be living in the home during that renovation? Like if you've lived in that home for 5 to 10 years And now you decide, well, it really, this kitchen really drives us nuts. It's ugly. It's not functional. It's not open to the area, so we can't see the TV or we can't see the kids when they're playing or whatever. And now you think, okay, well, let's renovate. Let's get the main floor looking the way we want to look.
That's an easy solution. We want it to look. You just go to an Airbnb.
Well, okay.
I mean, you have the added cost of it, but even still,
you have the added cost. Right now, supply and demand. There's a lot of construction materials that are hard to get. Good contractors are hard to get. As a whole, certainly now. So you got to weigh those things out. Do you have family that you could potentially bunk up with while this is done? Is it going to get done in time? And then how much money are you going to spend to do that? And where's that money going to come from? Because if you're getting a home line equity, a line of credit, oftentimes the rates are more than mortgages right now. And then you have a different payment schedule. So why not get a new mortgage on a new house and roll that all in? And potentially you get a home where it already has that kitchen that you like or living space that you like. And maybe it gives you some more space. And maybe it's closer to the park or closer to a school or closer to a highway. Sometimes you got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah. Well, just like the Love It or List It show, I think you need to consider both options because, you're doing yourself a disservice by not, unless you absolutely love where you are. You love your neighbors. Your house can accommodate the addition or the renovation to satisfy you. But that, unless that's the case, I think you need to look at other options to see what's out there.
And what, I'm going through this right now. I'm going through this right now at home with my wife because we both kind of want to move to Oakville. And we would like not necessarily more space, but different type of space. The holidays come around and we like to entertain and cook and have like Christmas dinner at our home. And when that happens, there's, there could be anywhere from 12 to 20 people at the house.
Right.
We'd both love to have a huge kind of farm style dining table where everybody can sit at the same table instead of having, people squashed in together and 8 people in one room and 8 people in another room and the kids at the kids table and this and that. I hate that.
But for that, you need a bigger open space, even if you're just temporarily bringing in folding tables, but stretching it through 2 rooms.
Right. Well, that's what we do now. We bring in the folding tables and folding chairs, and it's not pretty, but it works. Unfortunately, we don't have the space to have it all as one. So it's all spread throughout the main floor, and it's friggin' ridiculous. But, just the other week, she came home and it's like, I don't know if she finally just realized it or clued in, because I've been saying it for a number of months and months now. We live in a great location.
Yeah.
Like, to be on our street, at the end of the street, you've got one of the best parks in town. About a kilometer away, you've got the biggest park in town, which I love walking through with Winston on a relatively regular basis. And, the other end of our street, we've got Sobeys and all the amenities we need. You can walk to the hospital. You can walk to the schools. You're only a few minutes away from pretty much any other amenity you need. So it's hard to find those kind of places, right? It's hard to find well, depending on what you want, but if you want a park close by because you've got kids,
right? But I think that's nice to have. Obviously, I think most places do have parks relatively close. Like most municipalities are pretty good at building.
But have you seen some of the parks? Like if you go into the Beatty and Coates neighborhood, some of the older neighborhoods that are newish homes, like 15, 20-year-old homes.
Yeah.
Have you seen some of those parks?
Yeah, but the kids don't care. They just give them a slide and a swing and they'll be happy as...
That's literally what they're going to get. A slide and a swing that's like still made of those old steel ropes and shitty rubber half tire kind of swings. Come on, like there are differences in parks.
Yeah, no doubt. I wouldn't move for the sake of... I don't think having a nice park nearby versus a bad park would persuade me personally.
Well, maybe not. Well, personally, maybe not for you. You see, to me, it used to be really, really important that when I moved from Oakville to Milton, that I wanted to be walking distance from a grocery store, because I loved the idea of, in the morning, maybe walking over and grabbing some fresh bagels.
Yeah.
Or if I needed something quick, I could take the dog for a walk and pick something up. But now with Instacart as an example, things change. You can get groceries delivered really quickly. And time for me right now in my life is super, super valuable, right? I don't want to spend my time going and we had this discussion with Joanna and Amanda a couple of podcasts ago, but I'm not anymore in the mindset of going into a grocery store. I used to, the chef in me used to love.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I'm surprised you don't like to, because I enjoy. I mean, I haven't done it forever, but I don't mind it. I enjoy it. You walk around, you see what's new, you check out. Online, you can't see all the ingredients even. So if you're looking for something like right now, as I mentioned to you the other day, we're slowly transitioning certain items in our refrigerator in our pantry to healthier alternatives.
Can we talk about that for a couple minutes? Like, can we get off real estate topic? I want to hear about this because you've grilled me for a few years, because I think it was about 4 years ago that I went all organic. Everything, like, unless it's totally unavailable. And certainly, I mean, as I mentioned, once a week now, we're treating ourselves to some kind of takeout to support local restaurants and things like that, and just give us a break from cooking every day.
Yeah.
So obviously, 80% of that time it's non-organic, but all of the fruits, vegetables, meats, everything that's coming into our home, all the pastas, the sauces, even, our ketchup, things like that, all organic, has been for the past 5 years. Now with those convenience charges of getting stuff delivered to the home and us eating more because we're home more often. And I don't know, you're sitting around more, maybe at night, you're getting more snacky. Things like that. Our grocery bill is just through the roof. But the other day, you said that you're transitioning, and we had maybe a 30-second chat. But I want to learn a little bit more about this and what brought this on. And
I think it's just as we get older, and you just become. I mean, I have just become more aware of the importance of eating healthy and the impact of it. Short and long term, and especially raising the kids with proper eating habits. But there's certain, like, we're not going full organic, and we have done a fair bit of research, and there's certain things certain produce where you should, like they call it the dirty dozen. You've got a list of things that are more heavily.
Cucumbers, you should buy organic, as an example.
Pretty much anything leafy, any lettuces, that sort of stuff.
Yep.
But then there's certain things that you don't need to, like cauliflower, broccoli. Those things have natural chemicals in them that prevent bugs from getting them. So they're not treated the same way from a farming perspective. So there's certain things that we're transitioning to. And then certain things, like I sent you a picture of that mayonnaise. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Sir Kingston's.
And so I've always been a big advocate of cutting sugar out of my diet. So anywhere, and there's sugar in virtually everything if you look into it deeply.
100%.
So, I'm very particular about, and I always have been for a long time, but the bread I eat, but even mayonnaise, like Hellmann's has sugar in it. But this new one does not.
Condiments are a big contributor to poor diets, because ketchup is basically freaking sugar. But
hey, sometimes ketchup is what gets the kids to eat their meal. So for that, there's certain times where it's suitable.
Well, I'm a big believer, especially now having kids, and our kids are 4 years old almost. People eat what they know, right? And that's why you have so many different cultures around the world that eat different things and different habits, eating habits. As you go to poorer countries, they actually eat much better because they don't have all this processed stuff. They can't afford to have things like ketchup. They have their own fruits and vegetables that they grow. I've told you this story before. My grandmother, growing up in Hungary, she told me stories of going out into the backyard and literally choking the chicken, and that,
you should be careful with that term. That's also referred to as something else. Something your grandmother would not be able to do herself.
Well, let's not talk about my grandmother choking the chicken then. But she went into the backyard, killed her own chicken, and that's what was dinner, right? And then went into the garden and pulled out some vegetables and made it with the chicken, and grew those vegetables herself, or her family did. And things are different now, so you have to be more.
Well, I think more people here, as time goes on, I'm seeing more and more people growing their own produce as well. But the problem here is seasonally, it's not always. Not always feasible, right? So you do it when you can.
Living in the province of Ontario is not conducive to growing anything really, except apples, or some treed fruit that blossoms throughout the warmer months, I guess. But there's a lot of indoor growing happening. A lot more technological advancements and things that you can buy inside the home to grow your own herbs or even grow your own greens.
Lots of marijuana. I see that going out showing houses all the time. Remember in the summertime, people have the biggest plants just sitting outside now.
Yeah. Anyways, back to love it or list it. So I think the biggest fear people have in the renovation part of the process is the management of it, like undertaking that project.
Yeah.
And it's just easier to go out and find a home that's got it.
Well, right? A lot of people, not only the whole facilitating and coordinating, hiring the right people, trusting that they'll finish the job and not walk off with your money. But also, I think it starts before that. They just can't envision, they can't envision it, right? Like, whereas when you're out looking at houses, here's the finished product. This is what I want. But when they go to their house and they look it's hard for them to picture the finished product. So they don't even pursue it. But if you hire, get the process started, stop thinking about it, go get a designer, pay to get it created for you. They'll give you the 3D rendering, and then maybe perhaps that's what it takes to make that decision.
Well, and I think if you are thinking about that, should we renovate or should we just buy another house? I think it's worth the investment to spend the money and get a designer and get some mock-ups, because now you can get 3D mock-ups of what your home will actually look like.
Yeah, with furniture, decorated, everything.
Whatever you want, right? Like it's amazing what the designers can come up with now. And
even right down to choosing the exact same material. So if you have a certain type of flooring you want, they can drop that into the rendering. So, and then you can virtually walk through it.
Yeah. And sometimes that opens your eyes too, right? Like, so if the designer creates your new kitchen living room area as an example, and you've taken down a wall or you've moved counters and moved cabinetry, what have you, you might realize, wow, we can get this in this home and not have to move and not have to relocate little Billy and whatever from his school. That can be a good option. But it also might make you realize maybe your home isn't big enough to accommodate what you want or need, right? Like if you want that farm table with 20 seats around, even with this renovation, it's still not going to give it to you. And you watch shows like Love It or Listed as an example, you'll see that sometimes. They'll go,
how on average, how many people opt to reno versus Love or Listed? I wonder which route is more common.
Yeah, I don't know. I've watched the show. I think it might be a 50-50-ish split, right?
Yeah.
And again, if you've lived in the neighborhood for 20 years, as an example, there's a street in our neighborhood. There's a couple of streets that I can think of, but there's a street in our neighborhood. I won't mention it. But they have a street party every summer. The neighbors, and during the street party, they do a pig roast. All the kids get out. There's music blaring. The parents are drinking and having fun. They block off the street. You're not going on that street unless you live on it. So there's no through traffic. It's a great street. There's actually a home coming up for sale very shortly on that street. So I might have a buyer for it. But
there are clients of our team on that particular street, and they would like to move, but their hesitation is that they love the street so much. And not so much the street itself.
We have several clients on that street.
But also the neighbors. So, but as soon as you see one move, then all of a sudden those dynamics change, right? At some point, somebody's moving. It's a matter of who's going to pull the trigger first.
Yeah. Not a lot of turnover on the street over the last 10 years. But anyway, so if you live on a street like that and you love your neighbors, you guys are hanging out in each other's backyards. The kids have grown up together, because you see that a lot. Kids have grown up together and they're out playing road hockey together, things like that. You might not want to move, but you might have lifestyle changes in the house that you want to make, right? Whether you need that home office accommodation, or you need more space, or you hate your kitchen, you hate your bathroom. My house is not that old, 10 years old, but I'm looking at it. We just bought some new furniture. And I'm like, you know what? This summer, when you and the kids are at the cottage, I'm going to have the kitchen cabinets redone. And I'm going to replace the backsplash, because 10 years ago, the backsplash was nice and on trend. And my mother-in-law thinks I'm crazy because she loves it. But I'm like, you know what? It's outdated now to me. And there's, nice backsplashes right now, like really nice tiles is a big thing. And there's not a lot of wall space that it's a huge cost, but with giving the cabinets a more modern color, giving them that fresh look, because now they're looking like shit. They're all beat up, scratched up, black cabinetry to me is no longer a thing. So our island, which is black, is kind of giving me that sore eye. But you can do things like that just freshen up the look.
Well, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, for sure.
And 10 years is about the time when people consider it, because Alicia and I, that's on our list of things to do as well.
Yeah. Well, if you decide that even if you want to sell the home, you're doing those kind of things for your own enjoyment potentially, but also you're preparing the home that if you did need to sell it or want to sell it, that it's ready to go.
Right.
And home ownership should be an evolutionary process with renovations and upgrades and updates, right? Like it's something that you always have to be on top of, whether it's finishing.
You don't have to. Like these are things
you have to.
These are things you want to. There are things you have to.
Bullshit. You have to.
No, you don't. There are things you have to. Like we have a client that just bought a house in Burlington and he's gutting it and refinishing it. And it was built in the 80s and it was all original. And the homeowners lived there, bought it new and died there. And you have to do the roof occasionally. You have to do the furnace when it dies, but you don't have to do anything else. Depends on what you.
I don't know. I look at it a
lot of people would look at your kitchen and say, "Oh my God, I would die to have this." And here you are saying it has to be redone. So it's just that stuff is just personal preference.
I disagree because, as an example, with the backsplash. Let's just talk about the backsplash. Okay. So I have a mixed marble, stone, white backsplash.
Okay.
You know my backsplash. It's not bad, right? Like it looks okay. But I guarantee you, if I modernize that and bring it to 2021, and, there's a couple of tile specialists that stock some really modern, nice, new design type of tiles. If I pick a good backsplash, it will elevate and modernize the look of the kitchen really, really quickly. And we have preached for the last 10 years, as long as we've been in real estate. The goal is to have somebody fall in love with your home.
Yeah.
People fall in love with all the modern finishes right now. Like they want it to be relevant. They want to open a magazine and their home look like the magazine home.
Yeah, right? But we're not talking about selling. We're talking about love it or list it. We're talking.
Yeah, but why not do these renovations and enjoy it? Which also become a part of the process in updating your home to sell it.
Well, I recommend if something's not.
How many people, and in fact, I just came from a property that we're listing that they installed the backsplash now for the purpose of selling, and they look at it and they go, "Oh, this looks awesome. We should have done it."
Yeah. If something bothers you, for sure, do it. Because I think you should, when you come home from wherever, let's say work.
Here's another example.
Your home should be a place of like your little sanctuary. You look forward to going home.
The hardware on our doors, you have the same hardware, right? I'm talking about the handles and stuff on your interior doors.
Yeah.
They're kind of this satin finish, right? Yeah. Like a what do you call it?
They're brushed nickel.
Brushed nickel. Yeah. 10 years ago, that was the thing. Brushed nickel was, you have some nice brushed nickel hardware. It wasn't brass, right? Which most of the homes on the market at that time, you would find brass or some shitty stuff. And now it's at that point, it was brushed nickel. I'm going to be changing out all the hardware to put some nice matte black throughout the house because that's now, what's common. That if you buy a brand new build with a builder as an example, you're not getting brushed anything right now. You're getting flat black, matte black, whatever you want to call it. Glass hardware or different mixed metals are coming back, like a flat brass, things like that.
So I wouldn't spend. So for me,
same thing with our kitchen hardware. I'm changing our kitchen hardware because those long.
I thought that's what you were talking about.
No, I was talking about doors, like
interior door handles.
Interior doors, yeah. Right. But I'm going to do the kitchen at the same time because I think for $10 a piece, you do your whole kitchen for a couple $100. And you're just changing out the brushed nickel hardware into a flat black or something like a brushed gold, It can really modernize and bring your outdated. It's now outdated, right? Like those. What do you call them? Those long. I don't know. Maybe I'll throw a picture up on Instagram.
So for me, though, when we talk love it or list it, I think people have that. They're not making that contemplation because they don't like the look of something. I think it's because it no longer serves the right purpose. Like it doesn't meet their needs anymore, whether they are, I think usually, families growing, right? So they're running out of space. I think that's the big thing. I don't think most people say, should we, maybe they do, maybe it is that, but I think most of the time it's because it doesn't function the way they need it to function. Whereas an outdated kitchen being revamped will look much nicer for sure, but it doesn't. I don't know if people for that alone would be a reason to move. I think the main reason is because the house doesn't satisfy their needs anymore. Parking's a big one.
Parking is a big one.
That's a huge one. You can't change that. I know. I mean, that's often most people upsizing. That's why.
Well, size of the property itself, right? Like if, as an example, with our homes, you couldn't fit a pool in there.
Yeah.
So if you wanted a home with a pool and your lot is unable to provide that to you, you've got to move. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Or, you have kids that are going to be driving soon, or now you and your spouse. And it could be the opposite too. Maybe you have a double car garage with 4-car parking in the driveway, and now both you and your spouse are working from home.
Yeah.
And you don't need a double car garage anymore.
Right.
You need a single car garage, and maybe you could save $1,000 a month on your mortgage by downsizing or just getting a different type of home. Right.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if there's people now, because I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I did contemplate it because, as you know, I'm considering to replace my car, and I'm like, our cars, you're spending a lot of money to have 2 cars sitting in the fucking driveway. Like, why do we have 2 cars? I wonder if there's a lot of people thinking the same thing now. Like,
well, in your instance, you're going to be in and out of the home, especially during better weather. You're going to be in and out of the home even during this COVID period all the time, right? You've got to pick up a lockbox. You've got to run through a property. You've got to do a virtual open house, this and that. You can't leave your wife and the kids without a car.
Sure you can.
What?
People do it all the time.
That's a luxury. Okay, bring Alicia on right now and let's ask her that question, because I think there's no way in hell she would let you go down to 1 car and leave them without a vehicle.
I bet you we could make it happen. I mean, you'd save $1,000 a month. More. You'd save $1,500 a month.
Get a fucking Corolla then, okay? Don't be driving such nice vehicles.
But between car insurance, gas, maintenance,
spoiled pig.
Payments, no, that's what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm saying. I think that's probably something people are contemplating is I'm spending all this money on having 2 cars and neither are being used. So I wonder, if people and now builders are building houses bigger, much bigger single car homes. And that's maybe that's a reason people are, maybe there's fewer.
No, the reason is because you need more land to build double car garage homes, and builders are cutting land sizes because land is getting expensive.
Right.
That's the reason.
It was just a thought. It popped into my head for a split second the other day.
Well, if you live in a suburb like Milton or Oakville,
a suburb like Milton,
I was going to say something else, but I was going to say subdivision. If you live in a suburb like Milton, Oakville, Burlington, Guelph, you need 2 cars in a family of 4. You need it.
I think I want to know who's listening. So first of all, if you're listening, which you obviously are, follow the podcast, like it, subscribe, follow, and comment. Could you live, assuming you have a family, could you live with 1 car? And do you only have 1 car? I know people that only have.
And does your spouse agree with your thought on that? Because
my sister-in-law and brother-in-law have 1 car. He takes it every day. He takes it to work, and they're doing just fine. I mean, right now he's not working. He's working from home, but they've always only had one car.
I guess a lot of people do it. I don't know.
I mean, cars are one of the biggest wastes of money, really.
Oh, 100%.
So I can 100%. See why.
If you spend, let's say, I think the average household is in the areas that we do business in, they spend upwards of probably $1,200 on, maybe on average $1,200 a month, and that might even be low.
Yeah,
for two vehicles, because you can't lease a car or finance a car really now for less than $400 a month ish.
Yes, you can. I'm sure you can still get like Corollas and
that's still $350 a month. I'm saying on average, like if you want.
Oh, you're saying okay.
Well, a Toyota Sienna, even the most basic Toyota Sienna right now.
Oh, realistically, people are getting the Dodge Caravan.
Okay, well, Dodge Caravan, the cheapest Dodge Caravan. Let's say you're on a budget and you go and you get the cheapest Dodge Caravan.
Actually, I don't even think that car exists anymore. But
are
go
you
ahead.
Searching it right now? Is that what you're doing?
Anyways,
you got to be in that $350 a month range with no money down, maybe a little bit more. Like it's a 6-cylinder van. You got to be around $400. Anyways, so let's just say 400. Yeah. Because then you could be like you going out to Audi and leasing a luxury car for a whole lot more than 400. So I'm saying on average,
right.
You have two vehicles, you're probably spending $800, maybe even closer to $1,000 a month in payments.
Yeah.
Then you've got insurance on both. There's another, call it $200 to $300. So let's say on the low side, $200 for two vehicles. That would be super low.
Yeah.
Then you're going to spend, even if you're not driving a whole lot, you're going to spend at least another between gas, maintenance, and 407. I can guarantee you another $200 there. Gas, maintenance, 407.
Yeah.
So you're creeping up to $1,500 a month for two pretty basic vehicles. $1,500 a month converted into a mortgage is the equivalent right now of almost $400,000.
Yeah, it's big money.
So you essentially, your cars are a $400,000 mortgage. That's what your cars are for two cars.
Yeah.
And the higher price that you go, have you found out what a Dodge Caravan leases for yet?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They charge 6% to lease. That's insane.
They don't have lease programs. So that's why I was using Toyota Sienna as an example.
See. Yeah, because probably their lease is $100 a week.
Okay, so there you go. I told you.
Yeah. And that's for the most bare bones basic. Which
nobody gets. The dealerships don't even stock them.
Yeah, right.
So you end up upgrading. So you go from the $25,000 vehicle to the $30,000 vehicle, and now your lease is $150 a week.
Yeah.
So cars aren't cheap anymore, man. They've gone up in price. I mean, they've got, more features now too, more safety features and whatnot. But anyway, we've run around in our discussions today.
It's all relevant because if you love it or list it, one of the factors is how much can you afford in both scenarios, and one of the considerations might be where can you cut back, and maybe that means driving one less vehicle. Hey, there's an addition on the second floor added to your bungalow, or an addition off the back,
or downgrade your vehicles that you have.
Downgrade your vehicles, absolutely.
Maybe one vehicle doesn't have to be a new vehicle lease. Maybe one you go to a used car dealership like Gorad's here in Milton, and you find a good quality used vehicle for $7,000-8,000. You pay that off cash, and then you don't have a payment.
Right. Include that in the mortgage when you refinance to do your reno.
Yeah. And then, $7,000-8,000 rolled into your mortgage is, I don't know, off the top of my head, but quick math, somewhere in the vicinity of $50 a month or something, right? Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's episode 122 of KT Confidential, the real estate podcast. I'm Ariel Cremendi. He's Adrian Trott. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, and comment. Do you have a 2-car household right now? And could you
downsize?
Could you go down to 1 car, or could you, let's even elaborate on that even further. Could you keep 2 cars, but downsize those cars? That would save you some money.
And I want to know for those.
Does your spouse agree? Agree?
Yeah,
if you say we'll go from 2 cars to 1 car, yeah, no problem. But does your spouse agree from going from 2 cars to 1 car?
And if you are currently a 1-car,
I want you to ask Adrian. I want you to ask Alicia, because you seem to think that you guys could do it.
Okay. And if you are currently a 1-car family, I'm curious how that affects your family and your relationship. Like, are there a lot of arguments over who gets the car at what time, and when you get home, and you were 10 minutes late, now I'm going to be late for my appointment? Is it worth it? Is also the question.
But before we wrap it up, I think it also depends on where you live, because if you're living in a more, closer to a city center, or like a downtown core or whatever, and your spouse needs the vehicle, and you're left without a vehicle, you can always just get an Uber, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but would love to hear everybody's comments on that. Thank you for listening. Episode 122. We will see you next week.
Ciao. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.